Phenomenon that started back in the early 1900s. It continued through the 1970s. It was known as the Great Migration. Blacks moved in huge numbers from the South to large northern cities where great paying industrial jobs meant a life of home ownership, even sending your kids to college. Well, those factory jobs are gone, gentrification is in, and Black Americans are moving back down south. This has had enormous political and cultural implications. Joining me now to discuss the impact and the outcome of the midterm elections, Roland Martin, host and managing editor of the Roland Martin Unfiltered Show. Roland, thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here.
We saw in Alabama, I think, that election to fill a Jeff Sessions seat where Black women showed up in droves and sort of made history, if you will. We just saw the elections in Georgia and Florida, and we're seeing the South overall change. And I think one of those dynamics are a lot of northern Blacks who have returned to the South. What are your thoughts on this? Because it's cultural, it's economic, and it's political.
Well, I think if folks, first of all, study the fact that it was Robert Abbott who founded the Chicago Defender, who used the paper to tell blacks to come north. Many blacks were fleeing the South because of violent racism and for greater economic opportunity, not wanting to be on plantations. The problem is when they went up north, what they found was compacted housing, redlining. You still had segregation that was there. It simply wasn't the same as the South. As a result of manufacturing, to your point earlier, manufacturing leaving, but also cost of living in many of these places. If you're living in Chicago, you're living in Washington, D.C., you're living in a lot of these places, I mean, it has become very expensive to live. And so as a result, people are moving back. I remember, and this is not just folks, who are middle class. A number of years ago, I was talking to Bradford Marsalis, and he lived in Westchester County in New York, and he moved to North Carolina. So you're actually seeing that because the cost of living is also a particular issue. So if you have finite dollars, you can actually stretch your dollars more living in the South as compared to living in a lot of Midwestern places or in the Northeast.
Right. Facts. And that's the reason why a lot of our African American brothers and sisters are moving back to the South. Because, see, they don't tell you that the majority of redlining happens in the North. Matter of fact, the majority of the states that are Democrat, these are the states that are known for gentrification, that have the highest rates of gentrification. These are all facts, people. We can still be black no matter what party we belong to. Black is black. And we want the best for our people, no matter who is willing to give it to us. Let's continue.
Now, here's the thing, Roland, that I don't get. In New York City, for instance, there's a tremendous amount of opportunities, particularly if you've got the right kind of background, if you've got the right kind of pedigree. But this whole movement, the gentrification movement that's pushing people out, it's hard if you don't. And if you're born in the city and you don't, you have to leave it. So when folks leave these northern cities and go to the South, why do they vote in the same people who are going to enact the same policies, high taxes, high regulations that don't afford the sort of economic mobility that people want?
And I be thinking the same thing. Why do continue to vote in the same people that keep on enacting the same policies, that keep on putting us back in the hole? Why do we continue as black people to vote for the Democratic Party when they are the people that are causing these issues? Because these issues are happening in Democratic-ran states. I don't understand it. It does not make sense. Why do we keep on voting against our best interests? That is a wonderful, wonderful question, my brother.
Because it's actually not tied to that issue. Just like you might have folks who are living in the South in rural areas right now who still might vote Republican, but they're saying, oh, my God, what am I going to do about my health care? My rural hospital is shutting down. People vote for a variety of different interests that go beyond just that. And so it's...
If you notice, he's the great roll-off. We know that Martin Roland always finds an excuse for everything. He never wants to admit that the Democratic Party is the problem. And that is the problem. Anytime you only have one choice, that is called slavery.
It's not just easily, well, why do you vote Democrat? Why do you vote Republican? There are numerous reasons why people do that. Also, frankly, how they grew up, how they were raised, what is also in their particular families. You talked about gentrification. One of the issues that you have there is that what happens is in many of these areas where you have poor blacks, poor whites, poor Latinos, guess what? That's available land that's cheaper. And so what then happens is developers then come in, buy that land, redevelop it, and then when other folks can't live other places because it's too expensive, they begin to build those places up. That's what you saw actually in Harlem. And so the cost of a brownstone there today is totally different than it was 10 years ago. Now, when you talk about on the political side, I'm also check this out. I was a woman who I know who moved from California to Atlanta, and she talked about how voting in Atlanta was totally different than it was in California because she said, man, I was used to a certain way of voting with different machines, and I come here, it's totally different. And that's what you're also experiencing, African Americans who are moving from northern or Midwestern places or Western places back down south, and they're still encountering some of these issues of voter suppression and things along those lines.
Right.
But this is where I keep saying, though, where if Republicans actually would talk to black people and stop being scared of black people and truly present a broad-based agenda, they might have an ability to pick up votes, but as long as you are putting forth policies, and especially when it comes to voting, that black folks don't appreciate, ain't going to happen.
Let me ask you, because we only have a minute left. I did some research after the jobs number on Friday, and the employment to population ratio for black people has exploded. It's up. It's higher in the last 22 months than it was in the prior 8 years. Isn't there at some point will black people say, hey, you know what? Maybe the economy is doing better. Maybe President Trump deserves some credit. Maybe I should just listen to the message and not be so focused, to your point, on how I was raised or what my friends are saying.
No, actually, black people are living.
Facts. He just contradicted himself. Roland Martin, you just contradicted yourself, my brother, because he said it's the way that you grow up. That is to be taken into consideration. But he, on the other hand, says that it shouldn't. But when this brother said, okay, then, well, it shouldn't make a difference as long as Trump is doing a good job, as long as Trump is doing the best job for black people, shouldn't he be the one that we are voting for? Of course, Roland Martin is not going to admit that because he wants to keep black people on the plantation. Let's continue.
Because it goes beyond that. Donald Trump has to answer the question. I have been asking this White House, why is he trying to get rid of the U.S. Minority Supply Development Council, the only federal agency created by a Republican to aid black businesses? They want to wipe it out of their budget. He has to deal with why the Department of Justice under Jeff Sessions also say that, hey, we're going to go back to private prisons, and also telling people we're going to prosecute to the highest extent. Here's the piece. Black people do listen. See, people act like black people are not smart. No, black people are very astute. They know exactly what's going on. What Donald Trump has to offer is a broad-based message. It can't be singular, saying, oh, look at the black unemployment rate. Yeah, but the question is, what are your other policies that also impact black people beyond a job?
Roland Martin, great seeing you, and we'll pick up this conversation again real soon. Thank you.
Once again, Roland Martin talking that keep you on the plantation mess. He knows better than that. If the economy is good, everything is good. It doesn't make a difference. Black people, you have to understand that when you have more money in your pocket, all these other issues you can take care of. When you have more money in your family budget, these problems you can automatically take care of. Like health care, you can take care of that. If you're making enough money, you can take care of all of that. High rent, you can also take care of that if you're making more money. Because that's what it's all about. The more money you make, all of these poor things that Roland Martin is talking about, because they want to keep you on a poor man's plantation. That's why we're poor and we don't have opportunities. It's because we're poor. But the Republicans and Donald Trump is offering you the ability to make more money. For you can take care of all of these problems that Roland Martin is talking about. Point blank, period. The Democrats want to keep black people poor, for they can keep you on the